The road that changes you. Clara was 17 and moved through the world as if the air itself made space for her. She wore light silk dresses even when the sky warned of rain, and her laughter was the kind that bounced off marble floors and never touched the ground. Her father was a quiet man with careful hands. He neither boasted nor scolded, and when he spoke, he seemed to measure the distance between words as if he were setting stones across a river. Layla, the servant girl, was Clara's age but not her mirror. Layla wore plain clothes that knew the shape of work. Her hair was always tied back not to hide her beauty, but to get things done. At dinner one evening, while the chandelier held a circle of gold above their plates, Clara complained about the dullness of exams and the duller faces of those who studied. "Books make people heavy," she said, balancing her fork between two fingers. "I prefer to move through life lightly." Layla, standing behind her chair, said nothing. Her eyes observed the way Clara treated silence like a servant, too. Her father finished his meal and took a sip of water. The crystal chimed softly against the table when he set it down. "Clara," he said, "tomorrow morning you'll travel to your aunt's home in the old city." Clara blinked. "Why?" He folded his napkin. "Because it's time." "And Layla?" she asked, as if daring the arrangement to be worse than it already was. "She'll go with you," he replied. Clara laughed, sharp and quick. "To carry the bags, of course." He didn't answer. He only nodded once, as if agreeing with something she had not said. That night, Clara packed with the disinterest of someone folding last season's fashion. Layla packed with discipline, a small case, careful choices, the kind of order that can carry you through a storm. The road. The morning arrived with skies that could not decide. Clouds gathered and parted like thoughts, changing their minds. They boarded the long-distance bus that would take them over hills and down into the old city. The driver's radio hummed a tune that sounded like a memory. Clara took a window seat and expected it to be hers because she was who she was. Layla stood in the aisle, holding both suitcases, waiting to be told where she fit. "Put those up," Clara said, pointing to the overhead rack. "Careful with mine." Layla lifted them without complaint. The bus pulled away from the station, and the city's edges softened into fields that smelled of rain. "Switch," Clara said suddenly. Layla looked down. "Switch?" "The seat," Clara said. "I want the aisle now. The sun is too bright on my face." "The sun is behind the clouds," Layla said, not unkindly. "Do you always argue?" Clara asked, already sliding out. "Just move." They traded places, though the window had long since given up on sunlight. A child behind them kicked the back of Clara's seat. She turned and offered a smile that had cut other people before. "Sweetheart," she said, "your feet are not drumsticks." The child stopped. His mother gave Clara a look that measured her and found no length worth keeping. At the first roadside stop, steam rose from cups of mint tea like little ghosts. Vendors called softly about warm bread and olives. Layla paid for water and handed it to Clara. "I asked for sparkling," Clara said. "They had none," Layla replied. "Then why did you bring this?" Clara pushed the bottle back. "Do you collect disappointments?" Layla kept the water. She drank it and did not defend herself. They reboarded. The bus climbed into mist. The driver slowed. The road narrowed. The mist thickened into a soft wall, and the world's edges disappeared. People grew quiet in that way. People do when they trust someone else to hold the wheel of their fate. The bus jolted to a stop. A tire had surrendered to a stone where the road curved like a question mark. The driver stepped out with a wrench and a sigh. Passengers stood in the aisle, shifting their weight from one patient to another. Clara exhaled loudly. "How long will this take?" "I have an arrival to make." "You have time," Layla said, steady. "You always have time until you don't." Clara stared at her as if Layla had spoken out of turn in a language she wasn't allowed to know. "Help the driver, then. Isn't that what people like you do? Fix things?" Layla's jaw tightened, not with anger, but with restraint. She walked out and held the flashlight while the driver worked. She and the driver lifted, turned, set, tightened, the precise dance of solving a problem. Inside the bus, an elderly woman with a scarf around her hair leaned toward Clara. "She is like you," the woman said, nodding toward Layla outside. 17, 2 hands, a future. Don't mistake your fortune for a spine. Clara's cheeks warmed. She turned her face to the fogged window, but her reflection followed her. When the tire was fixed, the driver thanked Layla the way people thank each other when they've shared effort. Layla nodded. She stepped back onto the bus and took the aisle seat again without asking. Clara said nothing. The bus rolled forward, and the mist thinned into rain that drew silver lines down the glass. The old city. They arrived by late afternoon. The old city rose in layers of stone and stories. Streets were narrow and threaded with voices, bargaining, laughing, calling, repairing. Laundry hung like flags of ordinary victory over courtyards, where vines climbed patient walls. A bell rang from somewhere that did not mind being found. Clara took in the chipped paint, the shutters, the smallness of the place. "Charming," she said in a way that canceled the word. Her aunt's home had wooden floors that kept memories in their creaks. The door was blue, the kind of blue that forgives scratches. Inside was the smell of cumin and soap. A table sat by a window that opened onto a street where the world walked by without asking permission. Her aunt greeted them with a hug that felt like a rule and a kindness at the same time. She was a woman whose hands bore history, but whose eyes were not tired. "You'll share the back room," she said to both girls. "2 beds, 1 cupboard. We wake early, we work, we eat, we sleep." Clara almost laughed. "Work? Doing what?" "Whatever is needed," her aunt said. "My stall is in the market. Spices, jars, tea. It pays if hands are honest." "I don't sell things," Clara said gently, as if explaining a health condition. "You will learn," her aunt replied, and her voice made future tense sound inevitable. That evening was simple. Lentils, bread, olives, and talk that didn't dress itself in silk. Clara ate with balanced disgust. Layla ate with gratitude and the quiet relief of a day arriving where it belonged. When the lights were out, the room smelled faintly of lemon from the freshly washed floor. Layla stretched on her bed with the softness of someone who has earned sleep. Clara stared at the ceiling as if it were an insult. "Do you think he'll change his mind?" Clara whispered. "Your father?" Layla asked. "Yes." "No." "Why?" "Because he already decided." Clara turned toward the window. Outside, a cat stepped across a wall like a sentence that didn't need punctuation. Market days. The market woke before the sun, and with it woke smells that could teach a dictionary new words. Cardamom that whispered, pepper that argued, cinnamon that remembered. Clara stood behind the stall in a dress too fine for dust. Layla tied on an apron as if it were another kind of dignity. The aunt set weights on a brass scale and looked at Clara. "When you measure," the aunt said, "you measure yourself too." "What does that mean?" Clara asked. Keep your hand steady, the ant answered, and a smile flashed like flint. Customers came in waves, hands offering coins, voices asking for more, less, fresher, cheaper. Layla's hands moved like good sentences, clear, precise. Clara tried to sell without listening. She learned that people do not buy from someone who thinks they are beneath purchase. A boy pointed at a jar. How much for this? Clara didn't look. More than you can afford, she said. The boy left. Layla glanced at Clara. You could have told him the price. He looked poor, Clara said. And now he looks elsewhere, Layla replied. When noon arrived, heat gathered on the skins of things and made shadows shorter. A young man walked past carrying a stack of books tied with twine. He had the kind of face that had remembered more than it had seen. His shirt sleeves were rolled, his forearms inked with the honest dust of work. Clara straightened as if a mirror had appeared. Excuse me, she said to him, and the word excuse did not touch her. He paused, polite. Yes? Do you know where I can find silk scarves? I'm searching for something that suits me. He smiled with his mouth, not his eyes. The cloth merchants are 2 streets down near the well. Could you show me? I'm headed the other way, he said, and nodded toward the bookshop. Work. Clara watched him go, surprised that gravity did not bend in her direction. She turned back to find Layla's face unreadable, which somehow felt like an opinion. Later, the same young man returned with fewer books and a slower step. He stopped at their stall. Good morning, he said to Layla first. Your cardamom is so clean. Not always the case in this market. Thank you, Layla said. We sifted ourselves. I noticed, he replied. I'm Adam. Layla, she said. Clara stepped forward. And I'm Clara. Adam nodded to her, then looked again at Layla. I'll take 2 small bags of cinnamon. The real kind. Layla measured, weighed, tied. Here. Adam paid and lingered for a moment. There's a reading at the bookshop tonight, he said, glancing at Layla. Poems. You should come. Layla looked at her aunt, who raised an eyebrow that meant if the work is done. Maybe, Layla said. Maybe, Adam echoed, then left. Clara stood as if someone had forgotten to applaud. He didn't even... Even what? Layla asked. Clara searched for a word that would not betray her. Even notice. Layla returned to the jars. He noticed what he needed. The weather turns. Days folded into each other, neat at the edges. Clara learned the price of cumin and that changing it changed nothing about who you were. She learned how to count in small coins and be counted by others as one of many. Her arrogance did not disappear. Pride is a long road, and Clara had only begun the walk. She still found ways to make Layla smaller, praising her in a tone that removed the praise, correcting her loudly so others could hear, stepping aside when work arrived as if it were meant for someone else. Layla, she said on the 4th week, you carry the crates. I'll greet customers. I've already carried them, Layla said, lifting the last one. Clara frowned. You could have told me. You could have seen. The first storm of the season came without rehearsal. One moment the sky was a tired blue, the next a bruise spread across it and rain began like a sudden memory. Tents thrashed, stalls pulled up their skirts and tried not to drown. A crate of jars slid toward the edge. Layla lunged and caught it with her whole body. Glass kissed glass with dangerous affection. Adam appeared, as if storms had summoned him before. Here, he said, taking the other side. On three. They heaved the crate back into shelter. A child cried nearby, his kite strangled by wind around a pole. Layla ran out into the rain, untied the kite with fingers that ignored the cold, and returned it to the boy. His mother thanked her with a look that meant you will always be welcome at our door. Clara stood under the canvas, dry and observant. She felt the eyes of the market arrange themselves around Layla. Gratitude, respect, recognition. Clara knew those looks. They had been hers once, but for different reasons. "We'll lose the mint if we don't cover it," the aunt said. Clara hesitated. Rain was not for dresses. Then she saw Layla shiver and keep moving. Pride pushed one way, something else pulled another. Clara stepped into the rain. She covered what could be saved and learned that wet silk is only fabric, and that cold skin is the same on every person. When the storm grew tired and sat down, the market clapped itself back together. "You did well," the aunt told both girls. Clara waited for a private compliment, then realized the compliment was public on purpose. Adam approached, water running from his hair. "Are you both going to the reading tonight?" he asked, his voice offering the invitation to Lila and letting it splash near Clara. "We might," Layla said, glancing at the baskets still to be sorted. Clara found her voice. "I enjoy poems," she said. Adam smiled gently. They enjoy people who listen. The bookshop smelled like old rain and ink. People gathered in a half circle, their coats drying on the backs of chairs. The owner cleared his throat and read lines that made silence rise to the surface and stay there. Clara listened in the beginning, the way one listens to a foreign language, respectfully, without understanding. But a poem about a woman who mistook her mirror for a window found her anyway. Adam read last. His voice was not dramatic, but it carried like a small boat that knows how to lean with wind. Afterward, he spoke with the owner, with a teacher, with Layla. He asked Clara if she found the poem to her taste. She said yes, and discovered that adults use the word taste to mean attention. As they walked home, the streets glowed with the kind of light that only wet stones understand. Layla and Adam talked about the difference between honesty and cruelty. Clara heard her own name in neither word and found that unsettling. At the door, Adam said, "Good night," with the kind of warmth that has nothing to prove. He looked at Layla as if she were a person he could introduce to the rest of his life without embarrassment. Clara watched his back as he left and wondered when she had last been admired for something that would not fade. Morning returned. It always does. Clara began to wake before the alarm, not because she loved the market, but because waking early had become a small victory in a place where victories were ordinary. She learned to grind spices without tasting metal, to smile without selling her dignity, to carry without being asked. One afternoon, a woman argued over a portion. "That's too little," the woman said. Clara had learned something new. She slid one more measure onto the scale. "Fair," she said. "Fair," the woman agreed and left satisfied. Clara realized that fairness made her feel taller on the inside than heels did on the outside. She apologized to Layla, not with a grand speech, but with a straightforward one. "I said things to you," Clara began, hands on the counter as if bracing for weather. "Ugly things. I can't unsay them. I can only stop being the version of myself that needed to say them." Layla looked at her for a long breath, and then nodded. "Keep going," she said simply. "That's all." They kept going. Clara learned that forgiveness is not a gift you ask for. It's a weight you carry differently. The letter. A letter arrived from her father. The paper had the faint smell of cedar from his desk. He did not explain himself. He never had. He wrote of the garden, the tree that finally bore fruit, the dog that learned to wait before eating. He wrote that he hoped the air in the old city was good for thinking. Clara wrote back about the market, the storm, the bookshop, and, carefully, about learning how to measure with a steady hand. She did not write about Adam. She did not know yet what Adam was. Her father's next letter contained a line, "I trust the road knows where it is going." Clara folded the page and kept it in the pocket of her apron. The test. It came in the form of illness, as such tests do. Her aunt fell, not dramatically, but deeply. Fever held her with both hands. The stall could not close. Rent does not accept sympathy. Clara and Layla divided the day into shifts. Layla measured, weighed, sold. Clara ran to the doctor, to the pharmacist, to the water pump. She learned that coins move faster when you are carrying someone else's need. At the pharmacy window, the price of the medicine rose like a wall. Clara took off her bracelet, a thin gold loop she had always thought of as part of her skin. "Will this cover it?" she asked. The pharmacist examined it and nodded. He bagged the medicine and looked at her the way people look when they know they have seen a turn in someone else's road. Clara hurried home and sat beside her aunt, cooling her forehead with wet cloth. Layla's hands took over the stall and came back smelling of cumin and effort. "You did well," Lila said. Clara almost cried at the simplicity of the praise. "We did," she said. At dusk, Adam knocked softly. "I heard," he said from the doorway. "Anything you need?" "We're managing," Layla replied. Adam looked at Clara, and his eyes carried a respect that had not been there months before. "Good," he said. "If that changes, ask." They did not ask, but it helped to know they could. The return. The aunt recovered slowly, and with recovery came a return to the small rituals that make a life, sweeping the threshold, counting change, turning the sign. When the doctor said the word better, it felt like a blessing passed over their heads. Clara received another letter. This one was short. "Come home when the work here no longer needs your hands." It took 2 more weeks. Not because the work needed her hands, but because she wasn't sure her heart was ready to leave the place where it had learned to stand upright. At last, she and Layla boarded the bus again. The road seemed less dramatic this time, the mist more like a friend who knew how to keep its distance. Clara took the aisle seat without asking Layla to move. At the roadside stop, she bought 2 waters, sparkling for neither of them, because it didn't matter, and handed one to Layla. "Thank you," Layla said. "For what?" "For making it easier to share the world with you." Clara smiled and looked out the window. The clouds were deciding to be clouds and not threats. They arrived in the evening. The villa's marble floors still made echoes, but they no longer impressed Clara. The chandelier was bright and ordinary at the same time. Her father stood in the doorway, and his face, quiet all his life, could not hide its relief. "Welcome home," he said. "Thank you," Clara replied. She wanted to say so much more. She wanted to show him a market, a stall, a jar of cinnamon that had taught her the difference between full and fair. They sat. Layla brought tea, and Clara reached to take the tray from her hands. "I've got it," Clara said. "Rest." Layla hesitated, then allowed herself to sit. Her father watched the small exchange as if it were the main event. He poured tea and handed cups with the ceremony of someone hosting a new beginning. "How is the old city?" he asked. "Smaller than I knew," Clara said, "and larger than I thought." He smiled. "That sounds right." She looked at him. "You never told me why you sent me." He looked at the steam rising from his cup. "Would any answer have changed the road it took you to find out?" She considered. "No," she said finally. "Then the answer is the road," he replied, and he raised his cup a little, as if to toast what cannot be purchased. That night, Clara lay in her room and listened to a house that sounded the same and a heart that did not. She thought of Layla asleep down the hall, of dusty afternoons and wet stones and poems about mirrors and windows. She thought of Adam reading in a voice like a small boat. In the morning, she woke early without an alarm. She walked into the kitchen and began breakfast before anyone asked. When Layla entered, surprised, Clara handed her a slice of bread and a smile that meant we can start again and again and again. Clara returned to her college. She listened, took notes, and discovered that understanding is a form of beauty that does not fade. She still wore silk sometimes, but it no longer wore her. She visited the market on weekends with a list written in her own hand. She read at night. When she passed mirrors, she checked not whether the world would open for her, but whether she was opening for the world. As for Layla, she did not become smaller when Clara learned to be kind. She became exactly herself, seen and unharmed. Respect settled around her like a cloak she had been wearing all along. Sometimes, letters came from the old city. News about a new book, a repaired roof, a child's kite. Once, a small card with a few lines of a poem. "We are not who we were when we arrived. We are the road we learned to take." It was signed with a single initial, as if modesty were another kind of strength. Clara kept that card in her desk, between a ruler and a notebook full of notes that would have bored the girl she used to be. People who knew her before and after said she had changed. They were half right. She had not changed into someone else. She had uncovered someone who had been waiting under silk and certainty. No one ever explained the reason for the journey. It did not need explaining. Some truths are like the sky. You do not need to be told they are there. You need only to look up and finally see.